Welcome to Antarctica Did That For Me. We're a podcast for everyday people with a little adventure in their hearts. We're Keri and Casa, and we've spent huge chunks of our time living and working in Antarctica. Welcome to a journey that changed our lives. We hope it will change yours too. Hey everyone, this is Keri, one of your hosts of Antarctica Did That For Me. And this week I'm talking with Matty Jordan. Matty is one of Antarctica's most prolific social media creators. And coincidentally, Matty and I worked together at Scott Base this season. So one night we had a chance to sit down and talk about creating social media on this continent. It was a really fun conversation and I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, my name is Keri Nelson and I am sitting here with Matty Jordan, and we are both Antarctica creators, I guess is probably the term for our hobby / now we do more because people seem to like it. Matty, obviously, I'm asked about Matty Jordan all the time, even on my own social media. Do you know Matty? And I'm staring at him dolefully across the conference table every morning. But yeah, it's a really cool place to talk about because there aren't a lot of people who have the chance to talk about it. So I was hoping that you could just share with me your social media journey. Like, when did you start doing it? How did you hop into it? How did that go for you to get you to what you're up to right now?
It's a long story, but it's also a really short story at the same time. So actually, I need to credit you because I feel like you were the OG. You were pretty much one of the first people that were doing this kind of thing. I mean, obviously Ants had the documentary The Year on Ice, which you were part of, which was amazing. But then as I started getting into this crazy Antarctic world, it was your videos and Tony on Ice from South Pole who was sharing all of these really cool things that were going on that almost served as a bit of inspiration for me to not share it with the whole world, but just share with my family and friends back home what life is like down here. So just as a bit of background for those who don't know who I am, I grew up in Perth in Western Australia and didn't see snow until I was 19.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Matty.
So this whole Antarctic world was not only completely foreign to me, but was completely foreign to all of my family and friends as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what got you here?
So,
it's a little bit of a deviation from what we were talking about, but I'm so interested.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a deviation, but it's all part of the story. So I have a civil and construction engineering degree. I got that in Western Australia in Perth because when you grow up in Perth, if you're in any kind of engineering, technical, trade field, you get pushed into the mining and construction industry. Right. That's just how life goes.
Yep.
I imagine it's not too dissimilar to working on oil fields in Texas or Alaska or something like that. It's just the natural career progression. I did that for a while. I was working in mining support for a company that built natural gas power stations. And after a little while of doing that, I kind of got to the point that was just like, I feel like I kind of want to do something a little bit different with my life. And the money was great and everything was all good and it was fine, but I just felt like there was a lot more out there. So I quit my job doing that and bought a one-way ticket to South America. I flew into Ecuador just for something completely different. Wanted to go and hang out in the Amazon and do a whole bunch of other things. But in the investigation for that trip and the planning for that, I worked out that it was possible to go to Antarctica.
Right.
And that for me it was never something that I really thought was ever going to happen, but I've really loved penguins for a long time. And
who wouldn't? They're amazing.
I know. And I've kind of had a pipe dream that I'd love to see every species in the wild.
Okay.
So of the 18 species of penguins,
you got that.
I want to kind of see them all.
Yeah.
And I knew to do that, Antarctica had to be on the list at some point, particularly for the emperors and the adeles, but also just to tick off the gentoos and the chin straps and all of the other things as well. So
yeah, that
was kind of going on, and I booked a cruise as a tourist down to the Antarctic Peninsula.
Oh, cool.
In 2014, so what's that, 11 years ago now? And that kick-started it. That was the best 2 weeks of my life, and pretty much then and there I decided that Antarctica was what I wanted to do. This was at least something that I wanted to be part of my life for the foreseeable future.
Right.
So it took me 3 years of applying to various jobs.
Which is very common for people who work here. Many people apply lots of years before they get here.
Yeah. And yes, I applied for some jobs with the Australian Antarctic Program. I applied for jobs with the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust to go and work at their penguin post office at Port Lockroy, which I think would have been really cool. I applied for the postgraduate certificate in Antarctic Studies at the University of Canterbury, which included a fieldwork component for 2 weeks, but unfortunately didn't get that.
Okay.
And I applied for a project management role at Antarctica New Zealand in 2017, and they were kind enough to give that to me. So
all right.
I relocated from Australia, started working with Antarctica New Zealand in 2017, and I've been full-time ever since. So
you made it. You got there.
I got there.
You were motivated.
I had tunnel vision.
Yeah.
It was the only thing on my mind. Just how do I get back to Antarctica?
It's a place to obsess about. I mean, obviously, I've spent a lot of time here too. This is my 17th season on ice.
Which is mental.
It's mental. It actually is mental. I'm assessing how mental that is right now in my life. So far, I'm still here though. So it's a crazy that I'm embracing. But I understand what you're talking about, being one-track mind about it, because it does kind of get you and it grabs you. And there really is no place. It seems silly to say, obviously, there's no place in the world like it. But in so many aspects, not just the natural and geophysical parts of it, it's like no place. I couldn't even think of an equivalent of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been to the Arctic. That's maybe the only place that could potentially compare. I've never seen anything else like it.
And the communities, especially at station after station around the continent, particularly Ross Island has the most people in Antarctica because of McMurdo Station. It's such a behemoth of a station that particular kind of community of travelers, many travelers only, that's the part that I don't really know anything like. It's an intense and crazy and wonderful place. It's been really great. Like, I think people come here and they get their mind opened to a whole lot of different experiences, different people, different places. I've met some people initially within the first 2 minutes of having a conversation with them going, I'm never going to like this person. I'm not going to get along with them. We're just too different. We don't have any similar interests, and I'm not interested in the things they're interested in, and they're not interested in the things that I'm interested in. And then after spending 3 weeks with them, you're like, this person is my best friend. Yeah.
You just absolutely, you learn new things. These things that you've dismissed for so long about, and that's not something that I'm going to like. You see how passionate someone else is about something, and all of a sudden you're like, actually, I kind of like that too.
That's a really good point, because I definitely have made connections with people that were not even in the same Venn diagram of me ever. But then you realize you do meet in the middle. What I have to remember about people down here is even maybe the most boring person that you meet down here is still the most interesting person
100%.
Of the people they know at home. They've still we jumped through a million hoops to get here. Getting through the medical PQ, getting through the psychological examination, just rearranging your life so you can live a contracty kind of life. It's a lot, and it completely changes who you are and what you can do and what's possible in your life. And so even the people who I don't find very interesting, they've made all those moves. They're adventurous people.
Yeah, 100%.
I love it.
And quite resilient as well, because you've got all of these challenges that come up and all of these changes that you need to make at home, or with your school life or education or career or family or whatever it might be, and you go, you know what, I'm gonna do some things so that I can go off and do this crazy adventure and just see where it takes me and see what happens. And that's what I love about people down here. They're kind of go-getters, they're adventurers, they're people that just don't want to live the normal life. They're happy to go against the grain and get out there and enjoy it, make the most of life.
1,000%. Our podcasts are very different podcasts. You are doing an amazing job. I refer people to your podcast all the time because the information that's coming out of what you guys are saying about the place is invaluable. I mean, it just really is. It's an encyclopedia, kind of, let's cover this and really talk about this approach. It's the Bible of that sort of thing. Casa and I are kind of going off when we do our Antarctica Did That For Me podcast of exactly what we're talking about, that even the simplest among us can do things that get us to big places. Like, I was not an adventurous person at all. I shop at the mall. I have very basic tastes. Like, I wore Ugg boots and an infinity scarf, and I'm just like the boringest Antarctican ever. And yet here I am, and here you are from a little town in Australia, and sitting together, by the way, and bringing Antarctica to people who are really interested in it, which, let's get back into the social media things that we're trying to do, because I am touched always by the people who write in to leave comments, who are asking me questions in private messages, who are genuinely excited to find somebody who will tell them a little bit about this place. Just like I would have been. Social media did not exist when I first started going to Antarctica.
Yeah, of course.
But I would have been all over that, man. I came up in the time of blogs, and I absolutely stalked some bloggers. Sandwich Barden, Allison Barden was one of them. Meeting her was a thrill to me. I'm like, oh my God, you're famous from the blog I'm reading. It really is inspirational. I love the approach that you're taking to it. And I try to also really take a really open and expansive approach that is very inclusive of everybody, coming from all walks of life. I would say that the people who are listening to our podcast and the people who are interacting with me on the Simply Antarctica channels are from a broad range of people. Like I would say that there are many people interacting with me and with this material who we would have voted for very different people. Yeah. But that's not the point of what we're up to and what we're doing. We're kind of fascination for our world. Yeah. For me, it's fascination with the human effort of Antarctica. When people say, what do you love about Antarctica? Well, a million things. But in the end, being a part of this human effort to play nicely on behalf of humans. Yeah. Like that's the brief. It might be, probably is, because it's hard to make money off of Antarctica right now. So once that changes, and it's changing now, it's going to change this continent. But because it can't happen quite yet, everything's frozen. What we're doing is we are playing nicely. We're getting along internationally here better than the only equivalent would have been space. And now space isn't quite as frenzy as it used to be. Just to be part of that human effort, of that agreement among nations, is just a privilege. Absolute privilege. Where else are we doing this in the world?
Yeah, it's interesting that we're having this conversation now because Antarctica Day was just a couple of days ago.
That's right.
Which is celebrating what was the 65th anniversary, essentially the 65th birthday of the Antarctic Treaty.
Yeah.
Which is where 12 nations got together and decided, you know what, we're going to set this place aside for peace and science. And not only was that revolutionary, but for the fact that that's been upheld for the last 65 years is pretty extraordinary.
Bonkers.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like even when you're doing something like scrubbing toilets, you're not going out into the field constantly, or you haven't had a life here. You're engineering, you're doing a lot of construction down here, but you're not getting off into the wilds of Antarctica at all. But you still, even at that level of wiping tables, like it is part of the effort that is really working on behalf of all humans in the world. Research is very freely shared down here. It's very international. It's very collegial. And it's just remarkable that there's anything like that in our very upset with each other world that still happens. What are your goals when you go into your Antarctica content? Like, what is there a way that you try to go about it? Are you kind of trying to meet any goals? I'd love to hear the way you think about what you do, or if you think about what you do, if you're just doing kind of what you want to do.
I mean, it started just to share what the place is like with family and friends, to give them a behind the scenes insight into what life is like down here, just because it is so bizarre.
Yeah.
At Scott Base, we're living in 11 interconnected green buildings with 100 people. There's not many other places in the world that you're so isolated and living in a community that's like that. So that's how it started, but it's evolved over time. As my social media started growing, I've felt more of a responsibility to do right by the continent. I feel like I've got this, it's not a burden, it's not an overwhelming responsibility, but I feel like I do have a responsibility to tell the stories about the science and the research that's happening here. Like, I come from an engineering background, so I'm very technical to the point, and I love talking about things like it was minus 57 degrees today with 14 knots of wind, which means it felt like this temperature.
Right.
I love getting into the detail of all of that kind of stuff because that's how my engineering brain works. When I'm listening to your podcast with Casa, the thing that I love about that is you're both really empathetic and you can tell the human stories really well. That is something that I admire and I would like to do a little bit more of, to sit down with people and actually share their stories. And I mean, if you pay attention and you look and kind of dissect my social media, you'll see that I very rarely show people's faces that aren't my own. I very rarely include other people, and that's not because I don't want to. It's just I don't just want to throw videos up because I think, oh, that's a great piece of content. I'll happily refrain myself from using a really amazing piece of video if I feel like that person might not be comfortable, or if I don't want to have the conversation to say, hey, are you okay with this type thing? So I'm happy to sort of go at it alone, and that projects across my social media, but I do what I find fun. So things like over the winter, I was using the fun things that I was doing around the place as a way to entertain myself, to keep myself busy, to get me outside every day so that I'm not stuck inside in these buildings, because I mean, that can happen, right?
It's easy to be stuck inside, especially at Scott Base with the interconnected buildings. You don't have to go outside at all if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Mostly.
We had a person who, with the exception of doing their mouse rounds in the evening to go and check that everything around the base was okay, barely left the buildings between March and August.
Oh my gosh.
So,
were they sane at the end of that winter?
I think they were just quite introverted, and that's what they liked to do, you know, sit inside and do puzzles and write and read and all that sort of stuff.
Which is lovely.
There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm naturally kind of an extroverted person, so I like being out and about. I love nature. I love being outside. And the social media gave me an excuse to get out for at least sort of 10, 15 minutes a day and go and make a silly video or talk about the weather or do something completely different. So for me, it was cool to share all of that information with people, but it was also for my mental health as well, just to get me out and have a routine where I know, look, after dinner, I'm going to go out for 10, 15 minutes and I'm going going to make a video, whether it's a silly video today or if it's showing the weather or if it's just opening a door to show people what it looks like outside, simple things like that. It served a lot of purposes, but now, again, as it started evolving even more, my favorite messages that I get from people are either from parents or from teachers.
Right.
The messages from parents where they say, my son or daughter used to be really into just watching YouTube videos of things before they go to sleep, and now they almost run to my schedule, whether it's kind of 7 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. or whatever the time is wherever they are in the world, and they go, oh, Maddie's posted a video, let's sit down and talk about Antarctica. So parents and kids will watch the videos together, and then they might talk about the seasons and how they work, or talk about how weather patterns work and where snow comes from and why different clouds look different and things like that. So getting those messages from parents, that to me is worth more than anything else.
And that's a huge compliment to have a kid or family, anybody, like your content so much that they're seeking it out because you're obviously bringing value to their world. That's a huge compliment. Good job, Matty.
It's amazing. I love that. And likewise with teachers who say, we're learning about the seasons in my year 3 class in the Netherlands, and your video showing stars in the middle of the day in winter in Antarctica when it's midday is a really interesting way to start that conversation about how the seasons work down here and the 24-hour sun during the summer. It's an interesting way to portray how the season works, and then you can talk about the tilt of the Earth's axis and get into a slightly more technical detail, but it's just that little trigger point where people go, oh, you know what, we can use this as education as well. So
conversation starters is kind of one of the vibes of the kinds of social media you do, because I realize that's absolutely what's happening, and it's great.
There was a video I put up the other day around me opening the door, just walking outside the building at Scott Base. For those that don't know, we've got quite a lot of static here at Scott Base, so when I open the door, I always discharge on the back of my knuckles because it doesn't hurt as much as touching it with my fingertips. That's the reason. But people see just that tiny, minute detail that I was paying no attention to whatsoever, that is just so second nature to me, and I just, tap whatever, that's how I open the door. And people freak out, and then I'm getting tens, hundreds of messages from people saying, why did you open the door like that? Like, what's wrong with you?
I'd like to get into that part of it, because I'll just talk about a little bit about how I got into social media, which was the same. It was sharing. I grew up in a very small farming town in the US, and I am old enough that it was in the times when I was a kid when older people would go on travels, and then they'd come and show a slideshow at the local Elks Club, and you'd go and you'd learn, because you were never going to visit China or you're never going to visit Singapore, but these people in your town did. And so I started out kind of with that mindset to share with specifically the older people in my small town and write in a way about it in a way that was really accessible to them, because I kind of came into social media because I like to take pictures, and I was literally just sharing some really cool Antarctica pictures that I still love taking. That's still the kind of social media that I like to do. I'm much less comfortable with the video format of it. As you get more attention, people do notice these things, like somebody commenting on a gesture of mine. For some reason, that I don't know if I feel a certain way about it. That's not always like I want to do more of this. And in fact, anytime that I've had a video or a piece of content go super, super viral, where it generates tons and tons of comments and I get tons of people talking to me, for me, it's almost like oh God, and I back off, and then I won't do social media. So I have not pumped the gas at many opportunities to pump the gas, but that's just my own comfort level. I feel like sometimes I'm not sharing as much of Antarctica in the way that I would like to, because I'm so uncomfortable with kind of being perceived. And I think I just hide behind the pretty pictures of Antarctica. So it's a different approach. And I have background in news, and I used to get very kind of strange and awful letters when I was doing that. And so the idea of that kind of notoriety is not comfortable to me. How do you feel about that? Because you have an enormous account at this point, and you get lots and lots of feedback. Has that ever bothered you?
In terms of the way that social media works, I feel incredibly grateful and privileged that 99% of the comments and the DMs that I receive are positive. I receive very little hate. I mean, it does happen, right? It does come, and oftentimes it comes from places where you would least expect it to come from, people that know you, for example, in real life. Wow. But really, it's so insignificant, and I can just kind of brush it off. I think maybe years and years in the construction industry, when you're dealing with quite masculine, burly men, and the conversations aren't always very positive and polite, you kind of learn how to deal with that sort of stuff. So the very little negativity that I do get, I either go, oh, maybe that person's having a bad day.
Right.
Or, I feel really sorry for them. And oftentimes I'll reach out and say, hey, look, is everything okay? I know you've reached out in this sort of tone and this manner. And often when I do, they're not expecting me to reply to them because they think, oh, you must get so many messages, you'll never see mine. I just think, responding with kindness it's such a great way to deal with it, because often people then let their guard down and they say, oh, you know what, I actually only said that because I really wanted to ask about this. Mm-hmm. And then you kickstart a conversation and then people are like, you know what, I really like this guy, and then they turn into fans, and then a couple of days later they'll share one of my posts on their stories, and it's just like, you know what, this person is now helping to grow this thing, helping to spread the word and teaching their family and friends about what it's all like. So I've been incredibly lucky that a huge portion actually of the feedback that I receive is positive or neutral.
I've had that experience too, where people who come in with some crazy things that they'll write on your comments, when you do engage with them, I also find that they're really just curious people. Yep. I do feel like just the way that I look and the way that you look are generating different comments. Some people are not. There's no engaging with the things that they're saying, right? So I think it's known that women get different kinds of comments than dudes get on social media, which can seem kind of threatening sometimes. But generally, whenever I've engaged with true people who are like, flat earth is a thing, for example, and you say, oh, what leads you to believe that? I found that most people who come in with questions about flat earth, for example, because that's one that just comes up again and again and again in Antarctica content, they are very bendable. They really are just asking questions. They've been around a lot of people who have that belief, but they're coming to your content, they're coming to my content, the quotes, doing their own research. And when they're in that mindset, they are doing their own research in whatever form it is, and taking what we say to people about Antarctica as some of that research. As they should. We are primary sources, and both of us have a lot of knowledge about current Antarctica and what's going on down here. Where do you see this kind of going for you? Like, what's your goal? Is there a point where you just personally get tired of the kind of content that you're making and want to move on to doing something else? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
No, I don't get tired of making the content because I'm so passionate about Antarctica and I love everything about it, whether that's, wildlife or ice or speaking to scientists. I'm a naturally curious person, so I love sitting down and hearing people's stories and working out what they're researching. I mean, we had some talks on last night about the Swace 2C project and the enormity of the logistics of that, trying to extract some sediment core from hundreds of meters below the Ross Ice Shelf. From a science and a general interest perspective is incredibly appealing to me, but also from the engineering and the feats that just go into the logistics of getting things there, and then the operation of equipment in such cold temperatures, that is also hugely appealing to me. I'm always going to kind of operate in that education space, but I do want to sort of diversify a little bit and get into some of the science, get into environmental advocacy, get into having these conversations about climate change and about how our world is changing and adapting. And I guess I just want to be a bit of an advocate for people to look after our planet, just make good decisions. I just want to leave the world a better place than what I got it, I
feel like there's such an opportunity still here in Antarctica, and nations are making moves right now. There's a lot happening on this continent. The big picture isn't really completely understood by any one piece, but it is a place that humans haven't gotten our fingers in so much that we have just killed the vibe, I guess. You know what I mean? And so until that happens, part of me is like, this is our last chance as humans to not mess up some big part of the world that we're in. Like, we still have this chance to elevate ourselves, to be better than ourselves. And it seems ridiculous given the context of all of the headlines that we're reading right now. And yet, here it is. We can be better than we think we are. We still have that last chance. It's not gone yet. And I really think about being here in that way and this continent in that way.
I mean, it's such a pristine and special place, and we are incredibly privileged to be able to spend time down here. And I mean, yourself, 17 seasons, that's an enormous amount of your life that you've spent down here in Antarctica. I mean, it gets under your skin, and you really do want to do whatever you can to try and leave it like that.
What do you think of first when you're off ice, when you're not in Antarctica, and someone says, what's Antarctica like? What's the first thing you think of? Like, what's your primary gut check about the place?
It depends what time of year they ask about, I think.
Okay.
If someone's like, what was your favorite thing from winter, they'll get a vastly different response about what's Antarctica like in the summer when there's lots of science going on. There's the very chilled aspect of winter and just the overwhelming awe at what our planet can do in this seemingly really strange place. So when people ask about sort of my favorite experiences and things like that, if they're talking wintertime, some of the moments that have moved me the most have been just going outside, lying down in the snow, looking up at the stars in the aurora, and just sitting there and contemplating my existence and my place on this earth. That for me is, I mean, I'm not religious,
right.
But there's something really spiritual about those experiences that you have, that you're just thinking, how is this real, you know? And it's quite hard to explain to people who haven't seen it and haven't lived it and experienced it. But I guess that's another part of the social media. It's just like I'm trying to portray, almost like trying to recapture my childhood excitement by sharing it with other people to then see how they get excited about the things that I'm seeing, which makes me more excited about wanting to go and see and do more. And I think it just spirals from there, you know?
That's the one. You hit on it. It's really, in some ways, it's not selfish, but the instinct is you get something out of it yourself.
Of course.
By sharing it and getting to wax poetic about it a little bit.
Yeah, it is like that. I mean, I don't know whether it's selfish. I've just, over time, learnt to appreciate the small things. I think that's one of the things that Antarctica's really taught me. It's that it doesn't take being outside, seeing a massive auroral storm in the middle of winter while the moon's rising above the horizon and winds are blowing and there's snow being transported across these are all incredible experiences that are just so bizarre that you can't help but just be completely floored by how awesome it is. But even just the little things, right? You're just walking outside, and if you decide to wear sunglasses instead of goggles one day and you can feel that rush of cold air on you, you're like, oh yeah, actually I should probably go back and change. It kind of makes you feel alive, and it's just a constant reminder that there are all these really cool things happening that you actually need to kind of think about.
I asked you that question because I've asked myself that question, and I think my answer is the very first primal back of my brain, even before the thoughts come and before the words come out of my mouth, it's the light in Antarctica.
Okay.
I think the light in Antarctica is what got me doing social media in the first place, because that's what I'm always chasing with my camera. I'm never really I am taking pictures of lots of great things because the light is featuring them so well.
Yeah.
But I really think whenever I'm out with my camera, I'm chasing the light.
Yeah.
The light is just remarkable and ever-changing. Auroras was a good example of one kind of light. The time I've spent a lot of years, the first place you went to Antarctica, which is on the peninsula, Port Lockroy is actually very close to Palmer Station.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me how in a split second, a glacier could go from looking like an IMAX movie to looking like a Monet painting.
Yeah.
Like that. And just as remarkable, just its different look, from sharp and clear and HD to soft and impressionistic based on the precipitation and the light. And I would spend literal time chasing light. I mean, I would try to seed the station with cameras so I could never be far away, because you miss it if you do not run fast enough. I would run breakneck down the boardwalks of Palmer Station, chasing the light, and I would miss it 50% of the time. And it happened that quick. You still have some specialness, but it wasn't as remarkably fairy dust in the air with the sun catching it and a pure sunbeam and a whale jumping through it. It's never like that. Yeah, for me, it's the light is the first thing that I lead with in my heart. It's what I think I'll always think about Antarctica, that first. And then more things, all the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to the camera thing. I've got cameras dotted all around Scott Base. I've got one in my office, one by the locker room, one in the admin area, one in my bedroom, just for the same reason, you know.
You don't want to miss out.
If I see something amazing, I'm like, cool, I need to pick up a camera and I need to go now.
Yes.
And they've all got blank memory cards in them. They've all got fully charged batteries. They are ready to go. As soon as Antarctica is ready for me to go and capture something, I am bolting. I am running.
Me too. We are the same that way then. We share that same kind of passion because it's just there for a second.
Yeah.
That's actually a very metaphorical kind of thing to say about all great things in life. They're just sometimes there fleetingly, and you just got to go out into it. And I don't know, it is a reason to get out. It is a reason to impel your brain to see beauty, to know that it's there, which makes my life personally better, because the cameras and the presence of the place just makes me be unabashed about trying to capture that. And that part I feel selfish about, because what am I trying to do? Some people will say, why are you taking so many pictures? Not to me, but it's just general as a philosophy of life. Just take the pictures with your eyes. Remember it in your heart. Put down the camera. Live it, which I fully respect, and that is a very probably better way at looking at it than I do. But I want to see it, and I want to share it. And that to me is the picture part of it. I don't want to be the only selfish person who gets to see this moment. This moment is profound.
Yeah.
And if I can share this light moment right now, the way that airfield looks lit up from above with the perfect beam of sunlight, why should I get to be the only one who sees that?
Yeah.
Just because I got the lucky ticket down here? No way.
Yeah.
Everybody should be able to see this. And I feel really strongly about that.
Do you find that you still have time to appreciate things if your camera's not there? Like if you're out and about
Yes.
and you see something amazing, are you capable of just leaving the phone in your pocket and just enjoying it for yourself every now and then?
Yeah, I am. If action is going off too hard, which is always when the best pictures are going to be, but if for whatever reason there's water spraying or whatever, I will happily leave it and enjoy the moment. But I am absolutely composing the pictures in my mind, and I will remember some shots that way because I think it is just that perfect moment. And maybe it's just even a life philosophy for me, just in general. I think I do like to hold on to those moments of life that are just in perfect balance. Just like everything's great and cool for a second. And just in my heart, I like to take mental snapshots of that too, because those are the things for me that keep me going when things don't feel as good. You have this trail of memories. There is just this beauty in the world.
Yes.
So how about you? Do you feel like you're always wanting the camera, or are you able to leave it behind?
I feel like I've got better at it over time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons behind that is pretty much every day I've got a time-lapse camera out somewhere. Looking at something, and that gives me the reassurance that the camera's taking care of the photos. I've set it up in such a way that it's going to be clicking away and something will come from it, so I feel reassured that I'm okay just to leave the phone in my pocket and enjoy it for myself. That was not what I did in my first 1, 2, 3, 4 trips to Antarctica, maybe. The camera was next to my eye pretty much the entire time. And then I walk away, I was like, oh, that photo, that was amazing. But maybe I wish I'd spent kind of even just a minute or two appreciating it for myself without the camera being there. But now I feel like because I have so much tech that's working for me in the background without my constant input, that I can just sit back and enjoy things a little bit more.
But you do feel that hunger. It's the presence of that camera actually shooting pictures in the background that makes you be able to relax. That's interesting. I would go out and spend, so at Palmer Station you could go out into this backyard and it was just full of great things to take pictures of. And I would go out for 8-9 hours on a Sunday. And what kept me moving, and bring snacks and a beverage and just stay out all day if I could swing it. And what kept me staying out longer was the thought that there might be more gorgeous light. So it made me, I really think having that camera in my hand makes me a better observer. I see better. I see better with the camera in my hand. Even when I'm not taking pictures, I'm still seeing better because you're looking for the remarkable, you're looking for the profound. If you spend enough time in Antarctica, because when you first get here, everything looks cool and you're snap, 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 snap. You realize later that some things, everything looks cool down here. There are no bad pictures of this really gorgeous place, but you start to realize what's exceptional versus what you're going to be lucky to get a chance to see every day. And I'm always going for the things that I will not see every day, even here in this remarkable place. And because of that, it's like getting glasses or like a focus or a microscope or something. You've got the tool, and it's just a mental tool, really. I mean, obviously takes cool things too, but for my brain, I just really see better. I see more usefully with camera.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think you touched on it pretty well there as well, that the camera is a bit of a motivator. I've done a whole bunch of activities or gone on adventures when I really didn't want to because I thought that there was the potential that it might make a nice photo. And I'll give you one example. You may have seen this before in your time at McMurdo as well, but during the winter, there are a few times throughout the year when the moon perfectly aligns with the cross that sits atop Ob Hill.
Yes, sure does. It's gorgeous.
It is absolutely stunning. And I've seen a couple of those photos before, thinking that this is something that's going to happen every couple of weeks. I'm going to get all of the opportunities in the world to go and see it. It's going to be fine. I'll just get in the Toyota, drive over to McMurdo, park myself up next to a building and just wait. As it turns out, that only happens a couple of times throughout the entire season. And on the days when it does happen, you need the terrestrial weather to be playing ball as well.
Yes.
The first time we saw that was in May, and it was minus 40, maybe minus 45 degrees Celsius, pretty much the same temperature in Fahrenheit. It was blowing maybe 30 knots of wind. It was a really bad day.
God, what an awful place.
Really? It's a harsh continent.
It's a harsh continent.
And it was still condition 3, so the weather was fine to go out, but I just did not want to leave.
Understandably.
I was just so warm, I was cozy, I was comfortable. And then I looked at my photo planning app that helps you align certain things with other certain things. And this was the last time that the moon was going to be close to full in a location where in the surrounds of McMurdo Station you could see it. So I got dressed, I went out there, it was absolutely miserable. I was so cold. I was wearing pretty much all of the layers that I had on me. Just to take, I took a lot of photos, but essentially just to take one photo.
Right, the perfect one.
And I never would have done that
had
I not had a camera there. I wouldn't have put myself through that hardship and that discomfort just to go and look at the moon behind a cross. I mean, amazing. Because I did take.
Did you get the shot?
I got the shot, but I also took some time to appreciate it just with my eyes. But I never would have been there had I not had a camera.
No, that actually is true. I've done that too. It's not that particular thing, but I have so much not feeling in my little pinkies anymore because I've just, you stay out in these conditions because you just know it's going to be good if you wait for that thing to move just a little bit more so it's got the perfect silhouette. Even last night I was out of the pressure ridges and a couple of our friends were walking ahead of me and I was getting cold. My fingers were getting cold, but I just needed them to line up perfectly with Mount Erebus to have that perfect shot where they were centered and looked like the bestest of friends and they were just in sync with their walking patterns. And I think all the photographers who are listening to this will identify with that particular
It's the hardships that we put ourselves through.
I know. But it always feels altruistic when I'm doing it. It always is with the intention to share something beautiful, to remind people, like when I think of what my voice is or what it is that connects the things that I've done with social media. For the photography, I'm always just going for beautiful things, Instagram-y things, not journalistic style things, which I have shot journalistic style before too, but this place just inspires me to show its beauty. I mean, I grew up on Instagram. My first social media was Instagram, and Instagram has a vibe of being maybe a little fake and la 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 la, but this is not fake, and it just like lends itself so well to the joy that you feel when you know that there's that beauty in this world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ugly in this world.
Yeah. I find that so interesting. I don't do it these days, but back in my early days of being in Antarctica, I often purposely edited photos so they didn't look as good because it was so hard to believe that something was actually that beautiful.
Okay, interesting.
So I would, maybe bump up the contrast to a point where it looked a little bit artificial so that it didn't quite look as amazing as it did, because I kind of felt guilty at being able to see something that to me was just so perfect. That I was like, it can't really have been that perfect, can it? We just need to make it look a little bit worse than it did. And it's been a really long time since I've done that.
Yeah.
But when I first started out, there was almost like, it wasn't guilt, I suppose, but it was just like a disbelief that something could be as perfect as what it came across. And that's not to say that I took the most perfect photo ever. It was just like, maybe it wasn't as pretty as what I thought it was.
You were trying to keep yourself honest, in quotes, I guess, to not believe your own eyes. And I'm along with chasing the light, I'm chasing a feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to communicate what my heart feels like when I see stuff like that. And my heart feels like it's going to burst, like it's glorious. And so, like, the scene I'm seeing is glorious, And if I can communicate the way I feel inside in that picture, I'm so happy to do it. I do very light editing. Any editing I do is just literally on the Instagram app. I couldn't even recapture these pictures, and it's not even photoshopped or anything. That's always what I'm going for, is how do I feel? Can it burst out of this picture? Can you feel this joy that I'm feeling right now? I don't know if you can, but maybe if you look at what this is, and I can tell you what I was thinking in the text that I write. Can you feel this joy too? Can you? Can you? And I think the answer is, for a lot of people, yes. I think a lot of people really respond to that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's interesting. I do only very lightly edit photos these days because that's what it looked like.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
That's what my camera captured. So
I'm always trying to feature light.
Yeah.
Unless an animal does something really great and amazing right in front of me, I'm like, oh, click.
Yeah.
I saw this leopard seal once come out of the water. I saw the crab eater's head, and I'm like, oh man, that's the crab eater. He's so serene. And it was a leopard seal had ripped the head off of a crab eater seal and was like a puppet, like bringing it up. And that wasn't about the light when I was taking those pictures. No. That was about nature being metal.
Yeah, nature is metal, especially around here.
Yeah. This is great, Matty. I love talking to you as a fellow Antarctican and as a fellow content creator. And just, it's really good to pick your brain, because you're right. There's only a few of us out here doing it kind of in the way that we are. So this is a fascinating conversation for me. I'm really enjoying it.
It's actually quite funny because we've been postponing having this chat until we had some microphones in front of us.
I know, totally. Because we wanted to, just full disclosure, people listening, we wanted to have this fresh. Yeah. So we have not talked about this. This is the first time we've had a really long conversation since we've been here. Yeah. It's been busy as everything. But so is there anything that, in the context of the two of us social media-ers talking, that you'd like to talk about?
It's a bit of a strange one. Like, I don't know if you feel the same sort of level of responsibility as being someone who's like your longevity down here gives you an enormous, we say mana in New Zealand, just like this, I don't really know how to describe it, but you've just got an aura because you've been around for so long, you know a lot of what goes on here. And even just having a conversation with folks over at McMurdo the other day, you're like, oh, this is my friend on the other side of the telephone. We've worked together a bunch of times before. And even just hearing that and looking at the other folks in the room being like, oh yeah, you know what, like Keri's been around, she's done some stuff. But yeah, I think it's a real privilege that you are sharing all of your little stories on social media as well. Like I love watching all the videos that you put up. I don't know whether this is it was on TikTok, so it's public knowledge, but you're writing a book.
I am writing a book,
which is, to me, I'm
excited about it.
It's such an amazing thing to do, and it's going to be an enormous amount of work, but I absolutely can't wait to read about all of the adventures that you've had at all of the different stations that you've been at. What's this, number 4 now?
This is number 4 station for me. Oh, I'm so lucky. I want to go to all of them. Hey, if anybody from any other stations out there are hiring, I bring a lot of Antarctic experience. I'm your number 1 candidate. Maddie too. Hire Maddie.
Yeah, we're a package deal now.
We are a package deal. Oh man, Maddie, we need to get to another station and work at another station together. How fun would that be?
That would be awesome.
Okay, let's squad goals.
Yes. Yeah. But no, I'm really excited about reading that. It's gonna be awesome. I don't know what direction you're taking, but whatever you do, I know it's gonna be pretty awesome.
Thanks, Maddie. I'm excited. The same sentiments that we've been talking about, because I think we both come at this from kind of a service perspective. I just really would like people to understand what's to love down here.
Yeah.
And what I love down here. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. I feel like we could just keep talking for the next few hours.
Well, maybe we should do that over a glass of something in another location. But for now, we'll take this particular part of the conversation to the end. It has been an absolute pleasure working with you at Scott Base, Maddie. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you about the things that we're up to. It's just fun to pick your brain and get to know where you're coming from and who you are as a person.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great to sit down and chat.
It's
been amazing, on a professional level working with you, but then also just seeing the fun that you bring organising the man-hauling event between Scott Base and McMurdo the other day, which is just so cool. There were so many smiles on people's faces. There was so much fun and joy and excitement, and that's what it's all about, right? Like, there's a lot of hard work and a lot of science and a lot of questions that we're trying to answer down here, but you've got to have some fun at the same time, right?
That's, in the end, that kind of is what keeps you coming back for 17 years. Minus the fun, maybe it wouldn't be so many years down here.
Yeah. No, you're doing an amazing job.
Oh, you too, Maddie. And it's been really nice staring at you blearily across the conference room table at 7:30 in the morning every day. So anyway, Thanks everybody who put up with this long conversation, and thanks for loving Antarctica along with the two of us. We are Legion. We're all the same family. In the club, we're all fam,
Absolutely. Yeah, if you haven't already, I mean, you're going to be listening to this probably on Antarctica Did That For Me, but if you haven't already, go and subscribe to the podcast and listen to Keri and Casa chat about all things Antarctica.
And, of course, Everything Antarctica, the granddaddy podcast of Antarctica these days. Hey, we're a little Antarctica media coalition here.
We are indeed.
Yeah. Well, it's good to talk to you, Maddie, and thanks, everybody, for listening to us. Please keep enjoying Antarctica content and engaging.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Keri.
Thanks for listening to the Antarctica Did That For Me podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support our efforts, we would love it if you would tell your friends. And if you leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, it will help us find more of our fellow adventurers. We are on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and more, or find everything, including links to our social media at antarcticadidthatforme.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking about what Antarctica could do for you.